The soy sauce, Redux. John said, "Now there's a shitty bomber pilot." The rain was starting to let up. I took a deep breath of morning air and said, "The town is still there, Tenant. You played your hand, and you lost." "Wait, where is he?" Falconer said, "Ah, son of a bitch!" The blue pickup, which Tenant had apparently stolen while we were all standing in the shape of a doll and waiting to die, was barely north up the highway. I said, "Who cares? He's gonna run smack into the army's cordon. Hopefully they'll arrest his stupid ass." But Falconer was already sprinting toward the monster truck. He was damned if he was going to let somebody else get his collar after all this. I was about to bid him good hunting when John brushed past me and jumped into the passenger seat, and then Amy was running toward the truck, and I realized that nobody else was going to be happy until they saw a proper end to this. I ran and jumped into the back seat, my shoe dragging on pavement as the truck almost took off without me. The sight of the Army's airtight cordon operation instantly ruined every zombie movie for me. These people weren't stupid. Strategy was their thing. They assessed the enemy and adjusted their plan accordingly. If it was zombies, so be it. Thus, there was not a single soldier visible, not a single exposed face or a neck available to be bitten and zombified. Instead, there was a row of armored vehicles full of soldiers, Bradley fighting vehicles, I would later learn, arranged in a formation that would give them clear shots from their gun ports and from the turrets mounted at the top of each vehicle. They sat well back from concrete barriers that would stop any suicide vehicles in their tracks. Coils of razor wire were strung along the ground on both sides of the barrier. A horde of 5,000 zombies, even fast zombies, could rush the formation, and they would be easily blown to pieces by a crisscross hail of large caliber rounds. These men were told they were staring into the ravenous maw of a zombie outbreak, and they were prepared to mow that shit down like dead grass. After having followed him the 5 miles across the dead zone, we thought Tenant's truck was going to just keep going and plow right into that green wall of death, at which point I assumed we would find his weight and lead rushing through his windshield at the speed of sound. Was this a suicide by armored vehicle? For what, just to spite Falconer? God damn, this guy was a dick. Instead, Tenant's truck skidded to a stop short of the barbed wire. We stopped behind him, watching. Tenant jumped out and walked toward the soldiers, waving his arms in the air. It wasn't like he was signaling surrender. It was more like he was waving them away, screaming and pointing and acting like a crazy person. Then he was tackled and ripped to pieces by a monster in a black spacesuit. I said, "Well, that worked out." We all watched Tenant's well-deserved and awesomely ironic death when we heard the first thud of heavy machine guns erupt from the line of vehicles ahead. To our right, descending down from the water tower construction site, was a nightmare horde of shambling, malformed, infected Reaper personnel. They crawled and howled and shrieked and sprouted snapping appendages. Then it hit me that this was, in fact, Tenant's dying plan. Tenant had thrown his personal horde of infected at the army cordon, giving them their zombie apocalypse, and every reason in the world to unleash hell in the city beyond, regardless of what one airplane pilot claimed he saw. I screamed, "Get us out of here!" The infected were washing in from our right, swarming toward us in the line of armored vehicles in front of us. More and more of the vehicles were going weapons-free on the horde, the turrets and the machine guns punching fire and lead into the air. Falconer was already throwing the monster truck into reverse, cranking the wheel and getting us perpendicular to the highway, then cranking it the other way to get the big bastard of a vehicle heading the other direction. The roar of the big guns outside was like the finale of a fireworks display. I couldn't hear myself think. The truck shook. Amy screamed. Something had hit us. Falconer growled and fought with the wheel. We weren't moving. I smelled smoke. Another shell smacked the front of the truck, knocking the hood askew. Flames flew up in front of the windshield. Get out! Get out and get flat!" Falconer threw open his door and ducked out. John was messing with something in his lap. The fur gun had fallen to the floorboard. I grabbed it, then climbed over Amy and threw open the door. The sound of monster shrieks and cannon fire filled the air. My shoes hit the pavement and I heard Falconer scream, "The ditch! Get to the ditch!" I saw where he was going, the deep drainage ditch along the west side of the road, no more than 10 feet in front of us. John spilled out behind me, all of us now using the burning truck as cover against the barrage of gunfire. Falconer sprinted forward, making himself as low to the ground as he could, and dove into the ditch. Amy screamed, "John!" John wheeled around to see a big infected fucker loping toward him from behind, dragging the tattered remains of a black spacesuit. I fumbled with the fur gun, but before I could even get it sitting properly in my hand, John hit the "let's call it a zombie" with 3 barrels of shotgun. Suddenly, the monster was missing everything from the neck up. To Amy, I yelled, "Stay low as you can! Go!" We ran from behind the truck and tumbled down into the drainage ditch. Bullets punched the dirt and pavement overhead. The truck exploded, sending flaming debris rolling through the air toward us. It was the second time I'd almost been hit by a flaming truck part in the last half hour, a new personal record. Amy screamed, "They're going to kill us!" I said, "Down! Get your head down!" A spray of bullets raked across the water behind us, punching into the mud of the embankment. She yelled, "We have to stop them!" John was frantically trying to pull something out of his pocket. Shotgun shells, I assumed. Something whistled past my ear. Next to me, Falconer tumbled into the shallow water of the ditch. The stream under him ran red. "Falconer! Amy, no!" Shit. Falconer! Amy, no! I grabbed for her arm. She pulled away from me. She scrambled up the embankment, right into the line of fire. It seemed to happen in slow motion. She stood up, right into the storm of bullets, and started waving her arms in front of her, like she was trying to flag down an oncoming car. She was shouting something at them that not even I could hear over the hellstorm erupting all around her. Time seemed to stop. I had this frozen snapshot image of her, standing up there, silhouetted against the iron-gray sky, her pants soaking wet and splattered with mud, her skinny freckled arms up in front of her, pulling the tail of her shirt up to reveal 2 inches of pale, vulnerable skin. All these details, captured perfectly in my mind, in that endless moment. And the moment was, in fact, endless, because time had stopped. From behind me, John said, "Finally. Jesus." It was dead silent all around us. The water at my feet had frozen. A spray of bits of mud hung in the air on the embankment above me, where a bullet had struck a microsecond before. I turned to John, who had the soy sauce container in his hand. I said, "What the—" "Oh, Dave, you're here with me. I stopped time. I hope that's okay." You can do that now." "Yeah, ever since I took the soy sauce last night. It's like Zach Morrison in Saved by the Bell. The only catch is you can't actually accomplish anything while time has stopped. You can move yourself, but it's, mostly informational, I guess." I climbed up the embankment, taking in the frozen battle all around me, like some sort of huge, open-air, incredibly fucked-up sculpture in a museum. I looked back at Amy, a statue frozen with her mouth open, exposing her crooked incisors. I shrugged and said, "Well, it's actually not the weirdest thing that's happened on the sauce." John walked up behind me and said, "I wouldn't even put it in the top 5. I know what you're thinking, and no, we can't push her out of the way. Nothing can be moved. I don't mean that in the sense that they tell you not to change anything when you go back in time, like it's a rule or something. I mean literally nothing can be moved." I tried. I said, "I can move the fur gun." I still had it in my hand. "Right, and you're moving your pants when you walk. I think it's anything you were touching when everything stopped." "How long does it stay like this?" "I don't know. I've only done it once before. I couldn't intentionally make it start up again, but I got the sense that it lasts until you do what you need to do, whether you know what you need to do or not, if that makes sense." "What do we need to do?" I stared over at the column of smoke frozen over the burning truck, the still flames looking like orange-blown glass sculptures. Then, from the still, black column, a wisp of smoke moved. At the exact same moment I thought it, John said it out loud. "Oh, shit." The shadow men were here. It started with that single black shadow hanging in midair. It was moving toward us. Then I saw another one, and another. They grew out of the air, black shapes like holes burning in the white curtain of reality, revealing the darkness beyond. 3 and 4 at a time they appeared, the darkness taking on the vague shapes of men. Each time my eyes focused on one spot, walking shadows would appear where I wasn't watching. It was like trying to count snowflakes as they landed on a windshield. John and I backed away from them, then realized they were behind us too, on the other side of the ditch. We were in an island, in a black tide of them. The following is taken from Dr. Albert Marconi's book, Science and the Beyond. And I must emphasize that my encounters with the Shadow Men have been rare, in the sense that stepping in dog feces is rare. That is, the potential is always there. You never forget it when it happens, but you go just long enough between incidents to let your guard down. Yet everyone has been in the presence of a Shadow Man, in the same way that everyone has been in the presence of electricity. It is all around you, invisible, tickling at the periphery of your perceptions. Then one day, you touch a bare wire. These beings live in between moments and outside of time, across dimensions, and perhaps never fully exist in one particular spot. They have been called ghosts, and no doubt they wear the faces of the recently dead, in the imagination of a person trying to reconcile what they saw in that dark corridor, or in the silence of their bedroom at 3 in the morning. For others, they will perhaps appear to be tiny gray aliens. Centuries ago, a shadow man would have been called a fairy or succubus. That is how the human brain works. When it looks at a formless cloud, it tries to see a shape or a face, or otherwise associate it with something that makes sense in some known cultural context, like the proverbial image of the Virgin Mary seen in the grain of a tree stump or a slice of toast. But make no mistake, the observer supplies the face. You have never heard of anyone being harmed or killed by a shadow person, in the sense that you have never met someone who failed to be born. Our unique, limited perception limits us to see only one possible outcome of an event. If we grow tiresome of a tedious conversation with a man, we cannot, say, simply switch to another quantum reality in which that man did not survive a bout of childhood pneumonia, winking him out of our thread of existence, like turning the channel on a television. The shadow man can. There are enthusiasts of the paranormal on the internet and elsewhere who point to the tens of thousands of people who go missing worldwide each year and speculate that they have been taken by the shadow men. But I am prone to think that this is misunderstanding their methods. If the shadow men, say, invaded your home and took your wife, you would in that next moment have no recollection of ever having been married. At best, you would have only a terrible, gnawing sense of something missing, a hole in your life into which something should perfectly fit, something that should rightfully exist, but does not. One young man I know, who has written about the incident in his own book, claims that he retains distinct memories of a friend who was lost in an encounter with the shadows. The parents of the friend still live in town, yet they do not recall a son. The rental records of his apartment show no person under that name ever resided there. The records of the public school system retain no mention of a student by that name. The difference between our reality and the reality that this young man remembers could be so close that only molecules separate them. A particular sperm that failed to fertilize a particular egg in one reality, but that was successful in another. Some speculate that we sense the ripples of these changes in the form of déjà vu, or those infuriating occasions when we insist we recall an event or a conversation with a group of friends that no one else in the group recollects. You hear of a prominent person passing away, and swear that you heard that name, that same news years earlier. But of course, the real power of the shadow men is that we do not perceive them at all.